Elandra 4 burned beneath twin suns, the sky smeared with fire and smoke. A city once humming with life now lay in ruins, glass and steel twisted like paper, buildings toppled and blackened. Survivors fled in scattered panic, their shouts drowned out by the relentless roar of the Karnathi warships slicing through the atmosphere like harbingers of doom. Captain Ray Corrin stood on the bridge of the UTC Tempest, her jaw clenched as she watched the carnage unfold. This was supposed to be a minor colony, far from any flashpoint in human expansion. Yet it had become the first victim of a nightmare from the stars. "Status report," she ordered, voice steady despite the knot tightening in her chest. "Orbital. Bombardment confirmed," replied Lieutenant Sela, fingers flying over her console. "Karnathi fleet in orbit. Heavy plasma discharges detected. Colony defenses overwhelmed in minutes." Ray's eyes darkened. "How many survivors?" "Less than 2,000 estimated scattered across the planet's surface. Evacuation impossible with enemy presence." Damn it. The Tempest was one of the United Terran Coalition's newest warships, built for flexibility and speed, but it had never faced a foe like the Karnathi. The reports filtered through earlier. Monsters engineered for war by an extinct empire. The Zaur Dominion. Perfected soldiers whose bodies could heal wounds that would fell any other being, whose minds were sharpened for one purpose: to fight, to kill, and to conquer. They called themselves the War Breed. No one alive had seen the Zaur Dominion. It had collapsed centuries ago, leaving only remnants of its technology and bioengineering horrors. The Karnathi had survived in the shadowed corners of space, waiting, fighting through millennia until they could rise again, and now they had found humanity. Ray's communicator beeped sharply. Commander Vale's voice crackled urgently. "Captain Corrin, you need to extract immediately. Orders are to engage only if unavoidable." "We can't leave those people behind," Ray said. "Not without a fight." "Understood. Just don't get yourself killed." The Tempest surged forward, plasma cannons primed. As they approached the surface, a massive shadow moved beneath the clouds. A Karnathi dreadnought, its blackened hull scarred but still gleaming with deadly intent. On the Tempest's targeting screens, Karnathi warriors poured out in drop pods, landing with mechanical precision. Towering figures, over 8 feet tall, their muscular forms covered in segmented armor that seemed fused with their skin. Their faces, if they could be called that, were distorted, alien, with glowing eyes that burned with cold calculation. One of the warriors raised a heavy plasma rifle, unleashing a volley that shredded the colony's last defensive turrets. "Return fire," Ray shouted. The battle was brutal and unrelenting. Human soldiers fought with grit and ingenuity, ambushing, retreating, adapting. But the Karnathi advanced like an unkillable storm. Their wounds closed before a medic could reach them, their minds coordinated with eerie synchronicity, anticipating every human move. "Captain," Sela reported, voice tight with tension, "our shields are failing. We can't hold the line much longer." Ray's mind raced. The Tempest's weapon systems were powerful but limited by energy reserves. They couldn't outgun a fleet, and certainly not these living weapons. Suddenly the Karnathi dreadnought opened fire. A beam of searing plasma cut across the horizon, obliterating a human defensive position in a single strike. "Retreat," Ray barked. "Fall back to extraction point Bravo." The retreat was chaotic, with human forces falling back under heavy fire. Yet even in retreat, the Tempest's crew executed coordinated strikes, using hit-and-run tactics that seemed to confuse the Karnathi, who expected straightforward conquest. As the Tempest slipped into orbit, a cold message broadcast from the Karnathi dreadnought pierced their comms. "Humans, prepare to be extinguished." Ray stared at the warning, her fingers tightening on the console. The war had begun. The galaxy's most feared warriors had declared humanity their enemy. But something in Ray stirred, a stubborn spark. They had never faced the Karnathi before, and that meant the war breed had never faced humanity. The game was just beginning. The cold expanse of Karnathi space was a void of silence and deadly precision. The UTC Tempest slipped through it like a shadow, moving fast and low, avoiding detection. Captain Ray Corrin's mind was a whirlpool of calculations, memories of Alandra 4 fueling her resolve. The war was no longer abstract. It was personal. Karnathi fleet ahead, Lieutenant Sella announced, breaking the tense silence. 3 dreadnoughts, multiple frigates, escort squads. Ray's jaw tightened. The enemy's reputation for unrelenting power was well earned, but they had also shown something unexpected. Hesitation. Orders? Ray asked. Engage only if absolutely necessary. Avoid direct confrontation, came the terse reply from Admiral Vale. But when survival is on the line, absolutely necessary becomes a very short window. The Tempest slid closer to the enemy formation, cloaking systems humming. Sensors picked up the massive Karnathi dreadnought, its hull dark as obsidian, weapons bristling. The crew knew every second counted. One wrong move and they would be vaporized. Suddenly a Karnathi warrior pod launched from the dreadnought's belly, hurtling toward the Tempest. The warriors inside were monstrous bioengineered killing machines designed to crush resistance without mercy. "Brace for impact," Ray shouted. The pod slammed into space near the Tempest, ejecting armored warriors who charged with terrifying speed. The Tempest's weapons roared, blasting several to ash, but the rest adapted quickly, closing in despite the damage. The bridge erupted into chaos as alarms blared and systems flashed red. "Hull breach in Section 3. Deploy emergency shields," the engineer yelled. Ray's mind raced. They couldn't hold a firefight with these beasts and their overwhelming numbers. She made a decision no commander wanted to face. Execute evasive maneuvers. Use the asteroid belt as cover. The Tempest dove toward the dense field of jagged rocks orbiting Zethar's reach, weaving between tumbling boulders. The Karnathi warriors pursued, but their heavy armor and mass limited their maneuverability. The humans used their smaller size and agility to strike and disappear, a relentless game of cat and mouse. Karnathi commander Vraktal watched from his command chair aboard the dreadnought, eyes narrowing at the strange behavior. "These humans fight with madness," he said, voice like grinding stone. "They do not seek direct slaughter. They retreat. They deceive. They confuse." His second-in-command growled, "They are cowards, Commander. We must crush them before they learn." Vraktal shook his head. "No, this is something new. This unpredictability. It cannot be defeated by force alone." Back on the Tempest, Ray felt the weight of that unpredictability. Every tactic the Karnathi expected was upended. They feigned surrender, only to detonate traps. They sent false signals to scramble enemy sensors. They leveraged guerrilla tactics not taught in any tactical manual. After hours of hit-and-run skirmishes, the Tempest slipped out of the asteroid belt and into a shadowed nebula, hidden from Karnathi sensors. "We can't keep running forever," Lieutenant Sella warned. "They'll adapt." Ray nodded grimly. "No, we have to change the game entirely." In the quiet moments after battle, a message came through on an encrypted channel. No code, no firepower, just a single phrase in the Karnathi's harsh tongue. "Why do you fight like this?" Ray stared at the message. A question. The Karnathi had expected annihilation or surrender. Instead, they found resistance driven by something deeper: strategy, chaos, even emotion. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. The Warbreed were not just ruthless warriors. They were beginning to think. Over the next days, skirmishes continued with growing intensity, but Ray noticed a shift. Karnathi warriors sometimes hesitated, holding their fire or calling off attacks. Their battle formations broke apart under pressure, their communications filled with confusion. One night, in a rare moment of quiet, Ray reviewed battlefield footage alone. A Karnathi warrior was trapped behind cover, wounded but alive. Instead of finishing it, a human soldier reached out a hand. It was a gesture of mercy, unthinkable to the Karnathi. Ray whispered to herself, "We're not just fighting for survival, we're fighting to be understood." But in the shadows, Vraktal pondered the meaning of that mercy. For centuries, his kind had known only the code of war. Could these fragile humans truly change the unchangeable? The war was no longer just about conquest. It was about whether two species born to destroy each other could find something else instead. The asteroid belt of Zethar's Reach had become a tomb of silence and shadows. Jagged rocks spun slowly in the void, their surfaces scarred by centuries of cosmic violence, and now by the scars of a war unlike any before. For the first time, in their brutal history, the Karnathi found themselves unable to break the humans' lines, and for the first time, the humans tasted something they never expected: a stalemate. Captain Ray Corrin sat in the UTC Tempest's war room, surrounded by holographic displays flickering with tactical data. Her crew worked tirelessly, analyzing the patterns of battle, searching for weakness in the unyielding armor of the warbreed. "Commander," Lieutenant Sella reported, her voice steady despite exhaustion. "Karnathi casualties are rising. Their healers can't keep up. Their strategies are faltering." Ray nodded grimly. "Our tactics work, but only barely. They adapt faster than any enemy we've faced. If we push too hard, we risk annihilation. If we pull back, we lose ground. Again." Outside the viewport, the swirling belt of rock stretched endlessly, a labyrinthine battlefield where shadows became shields and every corner was a potential death trap. On the Karnathi dreadnought Drakkar, Commander Vraktal paced the length of his command deck, his massive claws clicking against the cold metal floor. His eyes, cold and calculating, surveyed the hollow map of Zethar's Reach. "This war was meant to be swift," Vraktal growled, voice echoing in the dim chamber. "But these humans fight with chaos. They do not follow the expected. They are unpredictable," his lieutenants murmured in agreement, tension rippling through the ranks. The warbreed's sacred programming had prepared them for domination, not for this grinding attrition. Vraktal clenched his jaw. "Our war code is fracturing. The old directives fail to contain their madness." In an unprecedented move, the Karnathi initiated new protocols. Systems within their own neural implants began rewriting combat priorities, softening lethal directives in favor of data gathering. They observed humans not just as prey, but as anomalies. Back on the Tempest, Ray sat with her team of linguists and strategists. Dr. Leon Cao, a xenolinguist, tapped rapidly on a console. "We've intercepted Karnathi communication bursts," Leon said, eyes wide with excitement. "Their language is fascinating. It's based entirely on commands and ranks. No words for peace or negotiation." Ray leaned in. "Could we use that? Send a message they understand?" "Maybe," Leon answered. "But it will have to be in war terms. They don't even have a word for friend." Ray considered this. If the Karnathi had no concept of peace, how could she reach them? "Prepare a message," she ordered. "Keep it simple. Command language, yes, but with one new word: learn." As the Tempest transmitted its signal, the tension aboard both ships escalated. Hours later, the unexpected happened. A Karnathi comm burst, returned not with plasma fire but with words: "Explain, learn." The message stunned the human crew. On Karnathi command, Vraktal's eyes narrowed in contemplation. "Learning," he mused aloud. "An unknown variable. Could this be evolution?" His council was divided. Some saw this as weakness, an opportunity to crush the humans, while they hesitated. Others, including Vraktal himself, sensed something deeper, an opening. "Prepare an envoy," Vraktal commanded. "We will meet them. We will see what learn means." The humans prepared nervously for the meeting, unsure whether it was a trap or a breakthrough. On the neutral station orbiting Zethar's Reach, the two species finally met face to face, or rather, face to massive armored faces and cautious human eyes. Vraktal stepped forward, his voice a low rumble. "We are born for war, you are chaos. What is this learning?" Ray responded steadily. "It's the choice to understand, to change, to find something beyond conflict." The tension was palpable, Every moment could explode into violence, yet in that charged silence something fragile took root, a tentative bridge between warriors born for destruction and a species born for hope. For the first time, both sides saw not an enemy, but a possibility. The neutral station hovered silently above Zethar's reach, a fragile island of steel and glass surrounded by the cold void. Inside its conference chamber, the air was thick with tension. Two species, bound by bloodied histories and opposing instincts, sat across from each other. Captain Ray Corrin faced Karnathi Commander Vraktal, the towering warrior encased in dark bioarmor that pulsed faintly with alien energy. His glowing eyes held centuries of war, yet now flickered with a spark of something new. Curiosity. We do not understand this. Learning, Vraktal rumbled, his voice low and deliberate. Our language is command, rank, and battle. We have no word for peace. Why do you speak of it? Ray exchanged a glance with Dr. Lian Kao, who was quietly translating fragments of Karnathi speech patterns on her console. It's difficult to explain, Ray said carefully. For humans, language is more than orders. It's how we share ideas, feelings, and experiences. We learn not just to survive, but to grow. Vraktal's brow furrowed beneath his armored brow. Feelings grow? Illogical. War is survival. Death is certainty. Maybe, Ray admitted. But what if there's more? What if you don't have to be born for war forever? Across the room, Karnathi officers murmured amongst themselves, uneasy at the concept. A warrior named Karel, younger and less patient, hissed, "This is weakness. They try to poison us with chaos." Vraktal silenced him with a glare. Watch and listen. Over the next several days, the two species embarked on a fragile experiment. The humans taught the Karnathi simple words beyond commands: friend, choice, music, coffee. Each was alien, each a puzzle. Dr. Kao worked tirelessly, piecing together Karnathi language fragments with human concepts. The process was slow and frustrating, often punctuated by misunderstanding or outright hostility. At one point, a Karnathi warrior attempted to mimic the human word for music by producing guttural clicks and rhythmic pulses, so alien it sent a wave of laughter through the human team, breaking the ice for the first time. Vraktal observed all with fascination, but also skepticism. One afternoon, the humans arranged a small demonstration of music, a violinist playing a haunting melody. The sound filled the conference chamber, notes rising and falling with strange beauty. Vraktal felt something stir inside him, a sensation unfamiliar, unsettling. The purity of the music pierced the armor of his thoughts. What is this? Strategic deception through sound? He asked quietly. It's not deception, Ray replied. It's expression, an echo of life. For the first time, Karnathi, eyes shimmered not with battle fury but with wonder. Over shared cups of bitter human coffee, a brew they found both confusing and invigorating, conversation shifted from commands to questions. What is hope? One Karnathi asked. Belief in a better tomorrow, Ray said softly. And trust? To believe someone will not betray you, she answered. These concepts were alien, fragile, and dangerous to the war breed who had lived only by certainty. But curiosity had taken root. Yet not all Karnathi embraced the change. On the dreadnought Drakkar, far from the neutral station, the Purity Legion gathered in secret. They saw this learning as contagion, a corruption of the sacred war code. Their leader, Vossesthal, spat venom at the thought. They would make us soft, weak. We are born to kill, not to question. They vowed to strike before the fragile alliance could grow. Back on the station, Ray and Vraktal sensed the growing tension. Your people are divided, Ray observed. Vraktal's gaze hardened. War is our law. To question it is to invite death. But to live, Ray insisted, sometimes means risking everything. The days passed with uneasy hope. The humans learned the Karnathi language of war, and the Karnathi glimpsed the strange, chaotic human world of emotions and choices. It was a dance on a knife's edge, between destruction and creation. As night fell over the station, Fractal stared out at the swirling stars. For the first time, the unthinkable felt possible. Friendship. But shadows lurked in every corner, and the war breed's ancient code was not so easily rewritten. The neutral station had become a peculiar crucible, where two wildly different species tried to forge understanding from centuries of enmity. For Captain Ray Corin and Karnathi Commander Vrakatal, the days blurred between tense negotiations, unexpected discoveries, and moments of strange camaraderie. It all began with coffee. Ray poured the thick, bitter brew into two mismatched cups, handing one cautiously to Vrakatal. The Karnathi's massive claw hovered uncertainly before gripping the handle, his glowing eyes narrowing in suspicion. "What is this dark liquid?" he demanded. "Coffee. It's a human ritual," Ray explained, forcing a smile. "It wakes you up, sharpens your mind." Vrakatal sipped cautiously, his expression twisting at the bitter taste. Then, unexpectedly, his eyes brightened. "This bitterness, it reminds me of the deserts on Karnath Prime," he said slowly. "It is tolerable." Over the next hours, coffee became a daily ritual. What started as tentative experimentation grew into an unexpected symbol of peace, two enemies sharing something as simple as a drink. In the midst of this, Dr. Lian Kao proposed something bolder: sharing music. On a small stage in the station's common area, a human violinist played a haunting melody, soft, intricate, and filled with emotion. The Karnathi gathered silently, their hulking forms oddly still. The music, so foreign and complex, stirred feelings they had never before allowed themselves to feel. Vrakatal stood apart, the slow rise and fall of the bow across strings piercing through layers of cold logic. After the final note faded, the silence stretched before Vrakatal's voice broke it. "Is this weapon?" he asked, his tone uncertain. "No," Ray said softly. "It's expression. Something we humans use to share who we are." Karnathi officers whispered among themselves, puzzled. Karel, the younger warrior who had doubted the alliance, scoffed. "Madness. Music is distraction from war." Vrakatal held up a hand. "Perhaps. Or perhaps it is a weapon of a different kind." In the following days, the cultural exchange deepened and often spiraled into chaotic misunderstandings. One afternoon, a Karnathi warrior attempted to mimic a human dance, stomping and twisting with all the grace of a falling asteroid. The humans burst into laughter, something rare and precious in the shadow of war. Ray caught herself smiling despite the looming threats. Could these warriors, bred for endless conflict, really learn to embrace joy? But not all was lighthearted. Theo, Purity Legion Karnathi zealots sworn to uphold the old war code, grew restless. Their leader Vosathal denounced the cultural mingling as heresy. "They poison our minds with alien chaos," he declared. "We are warriors, not puppets of foolish customs." Vostal's loyalists planned sabotage, a strike against the neutral station to shatter the fragile truce. Meanwhile, Vrakatal wrestled with his own transformation. The violin's melody haunted his dreams. The simple bitterness of coffee stayed on his tongue. He sought Ray out one evening in the station's quiet garden where strange alien plants bloomed under artificial lights. "Captain," he said quietly, "your world is madness." Ray chuckled softly. "Maybe, but it's our madness, and it's what makes us strong." Vrakatal looked away, conflicted. "War has been our purpose for millennia, but now, I wonder if there can be more." Ray nodded. "There can be, but it won't come without sacrifice." Their fragile bond was a beacon in the dark, but shadows loomed closer. That night, the station's alarms blared. Saboteurs struck, explosions rocked the corridors, and chaos erupted as security forces, scrambled. Ray and Vrakatal fought side by side, defending the station against shadows born from their own kind. In the crucible of fire and fury, they found something neither had expected: trust. As the last attacker fell, Raktal turned to Ray, his voice grim but steady. "This war will not be won by weapons alone," he said. "It will be won by those who dare to change." Ray met his gaze, the taste of coffee and the echo of violin strings lingering between them. "Then we'll change the rules of war." The aftershocks of the sabotage reverberated through the neutral station like a shockwave. Smoke still curled. From scorched panels, alarms blared intermittently, and the tense silence between the Carnathi and humans was shattered by the harsh reality. The war was far from over. Captain Ray Corrin moved swiftly through the damaged corridors, her boots echoing against metal floors littered with debris. Beside her, Commander Vraktal's armor clanked with each step, an imposing figure whose very presence commanded attention. "The Purity Legion will not stop," Vraktal said, voice low and resolute. "They believe in war without end. To them, peace is weakness." Ray glanced at him, her eyes sharp. "And to us, peace is survival. We need to show them their strength in something new." In the station's war room, humans and Carnathi strategists huddled around flickering holomaps. The damage had exposed vulnerabilities, but it also revealed opportunities. Dr. Leon Cao pointed to the displays. "The Purity Legion's base lies in the asteroid cluster Razor's Edge. If we strike decisively, we can dismantle their command before they regroup." Vraktal nodded. "But it must be more than a strike. We must shatter their ideology." Ray tapped her comm. "Prepare a joint assault team. This is our chance to prove that cooperation is stronger than division." The assault was brutal and swift. The Tempest and Carnathi Dreadnought Drakkar entered Razor's Edge in tandem, their weapons synchronized in a deadly ballet. Dropships unleashed mixed squads of human and Carnathi soldiers, each warrior fighting, not just alongside the other species, but for a shared future. Inside the Purity Legion's fortress, Vossathal's fanatics fought with desperate fury. Their hatred burned like wildfire, but they were unprepared for the unity of their enemies. As the battle raged, Ray found herself face to face with Vossathal. "You will never understand," he snarled. "Our code is sacred. War is eternal." Ray met his rage with calm resolve. "War may be in your blood, but it doesn't have to be your fate." Vraktal arrived beside her, raising his plasma blade. "You speak of fate, but we make our own." Together, human and Carnathi warriors broke the fanatics' hold. When the dust settled, the Purity Legion lay shattered, their war code broken. Back on the station, the victory sparked hope, but it was fragile. In the aftermath, Carnathi elders debated fiercely. Some embraced the new path, others clung to ancient dogma. Vraktal stood before his people, voice ringing clear. "We are not abandoning our past, but we are forging a new future, one where strength is measured not just by the blade, but by the bonds we build." Ray added, "And humanity stands with you. We will face whatever comes together." As the stars wheeled overhead, a tentative alliance was born, a union of species once destined for destruction, now united by choice. But beyond the horizon, the Carnathi fleet stirred, their warships ready to test this fragile peace. The real war was only beginning. The calm after the Purity Legion's defeat was fragile, like the last thin ice on a frozen lake. Both humans and Carnathi knew that old grudges and ancient instincts didn't vanish with a single battle. The wounds ran deep, and the true test of their alliance was still ahead. Captain Ray Corrin stood on the bridge of the UTC Tempest, watching the stars streak by. Beside her, Commander Vraktal's imposing frame was tense, his glowing eyes scanning the sensor readouts. "Recon reports an incoming Carnathi fleet," Lieutenant Sela said, voice steady but grave. "They're larger than anything we've seen since the Purity Legion was shattered." Vraktal's jaw tightened. "This is the fleet loyal to the old code. They refuse to accept peace. They seek to crush the alliance before it can take root." Ray's fingers hovered over the comm panel. "We need to face them together. This is our moment." As the Tempest and the Drakkar moved to intercept, the station's crew and combined forces prepared for a battle unlike any before. The enemy fleet emerged from the nebula like a storm of death, sleek, brutal, and merciless. Their war cries echoed across channels, a cacophony of rage and old loyalty. But the Allied fleet responded with precision. Humans and Karnathi worked in perfect synchronization, weapons firing in unison, shields interlocking in complex patterns. For the first time, two species born for war fought not against each other, but side by side. Ray's voice cut through the chaos. Hold the line. Protect the station. Trust your partner. Vraktal led a squadron of Karnathi warriors, their plasma blades humming with lethal grace. They moved with fierce determination but also restraint, holding back the instinct to strike without warning. The battle was brutal, each side pushing to its limits. Explosions rocked the void as ships were torn apart, and boarding parties clashed, in zero-gravity duels of steel and plasma. In the heart of the fight, Ray and Vraktal coordinated a daring maneuver to outflank the enemy flagship. Their trust was absolute, their timing flawless. But as they closed in, an enemy warship broke through the line and targeted the Tempest directly. "Evasive!" Ray shouted, twisting the helm as plasma bolts streaked past. Vraktal sprang into action, intercepting the attacker's boarding party before they could breach the Tempest's hull. "Hold them," he barked, cutting through armored warriors with brutal efficiency. As the battle raged, something remarkable happened. Karnathi warriors, once rigid and unyielding, began to adapt. They shielded human medics, guarded retreating soldiers, and even exchanged nods of respect with their human counterparts. On the bridge, Ray smiled despite the danger. They're learning. Hours passed like minutes, the tide of battle shifting with every move. Finally, the Allied fleet delivered a decisive blow, disabling the enemy flagship and forcing a retreat. As silence fell over the shattered battlefield, Ray and Vraktal surveyed the cost. "We have won," Vraktal said, voice heavy. "But this peace is hard won." Ray nodded. "And it's only the beginning." The test of unity had proven fragile yet possible. Two species forged in fire and blood had taken the first step toward a new future. But in the quiet corners of the galaxy, the old war code still whispered, waiting for its chance to rise again. The battle over Zethar's Reach had ended, but its echoes would resonate through the stars for generations to come. Captain Ray Corrin stood on the observation deck of the UTC Tempest, watching as the first rays of a distant sun pierced the void. Beside her, Commander Vraktal's massive form was still, his glowing eyes reflecting the soft light. "The war code is fractured," Vraktal said quietly. "Many of my people still cling to the old ways. But this alliance gives us something new." Ray nodded, her gaze steady. "We survived because we chose to trust each other. That choice is stronger than any weapon." A soft chime interrupted the moment. Lieutenant Sella's voice came over the comm. "Captain, the survivors from the Purity Legion enclaves have surrendered. They request parley." Vraktal's eyes narrowed, a mixture of suspicion and hope. Perhaps there is still a path to unity. The parley was tense, fraught with years of pain and bloodshed, but amid the war-torn halls of the neutral station, something miraculous unfolded. The Purity Legion leaders, scarred, humbled, spoke not with threats, but with questions. "What is this learning you speak of?" one asked. Ray exchanged a glance with Vraktal before answering. "It's the choice to grow beyond who we were, to see each other as more than enemies." Slowly, brick by brick, the foundations of peace were laid, but the road ahead was far from certain. In the months that followed, humans and Karnathi worked side by side, not just as allies in war, but as partners in rebuilding. They shared knowledge, culture, and hope. Vraktal found himself attending concerts, human music flowing through the halls, weaving a new language of emotion. He learned to savor the bitterness of coffee, to laugh at the awkward dance moves of his human comrades. Ray, In turn learned the discipline and honor that bound the Karnathi warriors, understanding that beneath their armor beat hearts capable of change, yet sacrifice marked this new dawn. Karl, the young Karnathi who had once mocked the Alliance, gave his life defending a human medic during a border skirmish, a final act that sealed his people's respect for humanity. On the station, a memorial was erected, not to the victors or the vanquished, but to those who dared to hope beyond war. Standing before the monument, Ray and Vrakatal made a silent vow. They would guard this fragile peace, nurture this unthinkable friendship, and face the future together. Because in a universe built for war, sometimes the greatest victory is choosing to be more. As stars shimmered, beyond the observation deck, their voices joined a quiet promise. Not war, not hatred, but unity. And in that promise, a new chapter began. One where humanity's boundless hope met the fierce spirit of a species born for war, forging a future none could have imagined.